is Friday, October 6th, 2017. My name is Judy Herrera, and I'm in Camarillo, California. It is my honor and pleasure to interview Jane Burke on behalf of the Conejo Valley chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution and Colonial Dames 17th Century for the Veterans History Project with the Library of Congress. This interview is being recorded by Ed Lynch from Advanta Videography and contains the reflections and memories of the veteran during her time in the Coast Guard. This is Jane's story. Jane, you were born in Cork City, Ireland in 1923. Your mother emigrated to the United States first, while your sister and yourself lived with extended family members. At age 13, you came by ship from Ireland to New York City with your sister to join your mom. After school, you worked at several bank branches, where you walked past 2 military recruiting stations. Do you want to pick up your story there?
Yeah. I used to walk by, my lunch hour, and I'd see these, Uncle Sam needs you. So I went to the library and I researched all the services, and I decided on the Coast Guard. I figured, that was fine. And when I went in there, I said, I want to enlist. And they said, well, sit down here. And they gave me a little test. And what it was, I'm sure they were testing to see if my vision, probably. Oh. Because some of the services won't let you in if you have poor vision or something. But mine was okay.
Good.
Anyway, I took the test, and I was taking the test, and they came in and they asked, how are I doing? And I had to follow a line from the bottom of a sheet of paper to the top. Oh. And a green light, a green pencil or something like that. So I was going along, and I was using my finger. So I said to her, I guess I'm not supposed to use my finger. Oh, she said, that's okay. Just keep on going. And I had to go to the top of the page. Well, I think they were testing for color blindness. Oh. Anyway, I passed it, and we made arrangements. This was in October. And then they said if I went in, I'd go in November. So I went home, and I got my citizenship papers. What I had were my mother's citizenship papers, and they looked at them and stuff like that. And then, of course, I put the papers back where she had them, because I told her I was going to go in the service, and she said she didn't like that. She was strictly against it. And I said, well, okay, if you don't want me to go now, I'm going to go next year, because I'll be 21 and I can make my own plans. Anyway, to decide in the Coast Guard, I went to the library and read everything up on the various services, and I decided the Coast Guard was the one I preferred.
The oldest of our fighting forces, with a tradition of courage second to none, the United States Coast Guard carries the war to the Axis on the 7 seas. But nowhere do men of the Coast Guard wage more bitter and effective warfare than in the sub-infested waters of the Atlantic sea lanes. The U-boats must be battled to the death. The stuff of production must go through. For upon the Battle of the Atlantic depends the success of assaults in the making, the success of invasions to come. The men of the Coast Guard do their job, and do it well.
spars have a job to do too. Perhaps our jobs are not, for the moment, so exciting as sending a depth charge over a cutter's side or seeing a telltale oil slick rise from a blasted sub, but they are vital jobs which must be done. Vital jobs done by women so that men may fight.
That's why you join the spars. Basic training doesn't take long, only a month, and your pay begins at once. You learn to take orders and to carry them out. You acquire new vigor, new confidence. You learn to march with others and to work with others. And you learn, too, that to do your best is the proud tradition of the Coast Guard. You get good food, plenty of it, and boy, how you stow it away. In school, you learn the lore of ships and aircraft, the language of the sea. Then, almost before you know it, you pass in final review, no longer a boot, a full-fledged spar. Now, a man can go to sea. You take over his job with the same rating, the same pay, the same privileges, and the same responsibilities. These are the jobs which must be done by spars. The movement of ships and men, entrusted to paper, is also entrusted to you. There are many jobs the Coast Guard needs you for. Each one helps to win this war. And then, too, the skills learned today will mean better jobs tomorrow. You won't get to be an admiral, but you may be the admiral's secretary. If you are a laboratory technician, dental hygienist, a dietitian, an engineer, or a draftsman, the spars need your knowledge, your skill. This chemistry major found her berth all right. Here, too, a spar takes over, and one more pharmacist mate can go to sea. You may be assigned to duty at one of many busy ports or stations. It may be Boston or New York, Miami or New Orleans, San Francisco or Seattle, or even at Coast Guard headquarters in Washington. As men go to battle, spars take increasingly important assignments. Radio technicians are being trained to maintain the Coast Guard's contact between ship and shore. If you want to hear history in the making, you couldn't pick a better spot. Out of this room go the commands to the men on the ships, to the men in the planes, who carry out the missions which help defeat our enemies. The mission will be accomplished because the Coast Guard is always ready. More spars mean more men on ships. More men on ships mean more missions accomplished. Join the spars and release a man for sea.
So after a while, my mother gave up because she knew I was going to leave. And I was set up for, I think, November 11th to leave New York City to go to Florida for boot camp. And I guess boot camp was 3 months or something at that time. And when we got ready to leave there, they told us we could have our choice of where to go.
Oh.
big choice, I tell you. So I decided, well, I'd go to Virginia, because I thought that'd be a nice place to go. Well, when I got my final papers, they were Seattle, Washington. So I said, well, what's the difference? I want to join it, and I'll just go wherever they want me to go.
Sure.
So I went to Seattle, and we were located in a converted building from a hotel to a barracks. And it was okay going down to, walking down those hills. But walking up was a different story. You're dead by the time you walk up to where we were. Anyway, well, I wasn't doing anything. I took the aptitude test, and they said, you can go to cook school if you want. And I said, well, I'm not very interested in food, so I just said I'd go to cook school. So well, they said, you can be here until something happens or something. I had done some clerical work before I went in, and they assigned me some clerical work. But I had to walk down there every day to the bottom of the hill and walk back every night. And I said, that was really some exercise, Anyway, some of the girls said they needed a telephone operator. And I said, well, I'd do it, but I don't know how to use, those telephones. So they sent me to the telephone company in Seattle to learn. And it was just a week or so. And then, let's see, 5 of us or something were scheduled to go to, where did we go? Empire, Oregon. I think that was the first place. And
How was the weather in Seattle?
in Seattle, well, it was rainy. But anyway, we got to Empire, Oregon. And that was really a military base, We had to stand inspection, the men and the women. Every time we were going on liberty, we left at 5 o'clock. And every one of us they checked you out. That was really military. But those boys that were in there, when we were taking our shower, would call the fire drill. That was pretty nervy of them, we thought. So all we had to, everybody's in showers and stuff like that. We grabbed our raincoat and out we went. We stood our inspection. Anyway, it was kind of nice, but it was real windy there.
Oh, okay.
Just all the wind coming in from the ocean all the time. And every time I saw a listing on the bulletin board about exams, I decided to take them. And I got on the list for one of them to go to either Hawaii or Alaska. So they set me up with an appointment to go up to Seattle. And they said, where do you want to go? And I said, Hawaii.
Of course.
And they said, well, that's all full. So we'll send you to Alaska. How's that? I said, well, sure, that's okay. And it was set up, and we had to go to Port Townsend Barracks or someplace for a while. But on the way up, we went up a ship, and that was very nice. And in Prince Rupert, the Canadians had us all go to lunch on the way up. And then we got on the ship again, and off we went. So we get to
Ketchikan?
and we were assigned to barracks, and they were rather fussy there. They'd go around with the white glove treatment to see if there was any dust around. And if there were, you got some dinners for that. So we tried, there were 4 or 6 of us in the dormitory, I think. We made sure that we didn't have a white glove with dirt or anything on it. So it was fun in Alaska. We got used to the weather, and the snow was beautiful, and it stayed light a lot of times into the night. And we did the military thing with taps and everything. I mean, they did the taps. We just were in bed. And then I never did go anywhere except Ketchikan. But one day, a friend and I decided, well, we needed a walk, and we'd go for a walk. And we stopped at the canteen, and we got a couple of candy bars each in case we got hungry. And we said we'd be back for dinner. And that was at 6 o'clock at night. So we started up the trail. We had a little trail we used to go up. And we decided, oh, it's snowing. We'd better get out of here. So we got a few steps on the trail, and then we lost the trail. And we didn't know which way to turn. So we sat in a couple of stumps, and they were wet, so we didn't like that. So we figured, well, we didn't know, we better go one way, or the other. And we did walk for a while. And then we heard a dog. He was barking and barking. But, well, he was very far. We knew he was quite a bit away because we barely heard it. So we walked and walked and walked and walked. And we finally got to where the dog was. Well, we figured there'd be people around there. There was nothing around there, just the dog on top of an old shack, and he was barking. But he was about 5 miles from the road. We could see the road.
Oh, okay.
And then we got on the road and we started walking, and we heard a taxi. Or we heard some kind of a motor. We didn't know it was a taxi at that time, up in the hills. And we said, wouldn't it be great if it came down this way? And it did. Oh. And he stopped, and he picked us up, and he took us to the base.
Oh, so how long were you lost?
Well, we were lost until about 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that.
Scary.
And they had, of course, they had a rescue. They were doing a rescue thing, getting people together and the food and everything together. So when the cab came, they could stop, and they all went to bed.
Oh.
And we had to report to the master in the morning, and he gave us 2 weeks confined to base, which was not much, So,
What kind of jobs were you doing while you were at the base?
well, the jobs we did were telephone operators. We had to, set up calls and conferences and things like that with other offshore and stuff. And it was very interesting, but you're sitting there quite a lot, and we just had a small switchboard, it wasn't, and only one person could operate it at a time in our place. Anyway, in Alaska, when I saw anything on the boards, I was still checking to get ahead. So I went up there as petty officer 3rd class, and I took the test for petty officer 2nd class, and I passed that, and I got on there, and then I became petty officer 1st class, and the war was over, so I didn't go any further.
That's wonderful.
So then we could fly back to Seattle and fly home if we wanted to, whatever we wanted to do. They gave us travel money, so much per mile.
Okay.
And that was about it.
So you So you were a supervisor at some point when you became petty officer first class. You're supervising other women who were operators as well.
Yeah, it started when I was petty officer, third class. I went on a promotional thing, and I was supervising boys and girls.
Okay.
And of course, the boys said, oh, they wanted to go to sea and stuff like that. And some of them got to go to sea, whether they meant it or not.
Okay. Were there any fears in Alaska? You're very close to Russia. Was there any concern or?
Well, they talked about that, about the Russians. You better watch out, the Russians might come and get us, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So,
or the Japanese too?
or the Japanese on the coast, you know.
Yes.
But the men did that, you know, that kind of stuff. They were closer to the coast where they might come in during evening or whatever.
Okay. So you weren't necessarily issued a rifle, or you didn't have anything to do with the weapons. You
No.
were all communications.
Yeah.
Which is very important. Okay, setting up
Mm.
conference calls with
Yeah.
3 to 4 people and shipped ashore.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Do you want to go back to boot camp and revisit that a little bit?
Okay.
Remember Florida and
Oh, when I saw Florida, I was really delighted. It was warm and everything. And we had, you know, a lot of parades. We had to practice for parades a lot. And for hours, you know. And they had visiting this and visiting that. And every time anything like that happened, we had to march. And of course, they sang as they marched, you know, something. I don't remember what they did now, but I remember one day we were there practically 4 hours standing. Well, we didn't have to stand at attention for 4 hours, but we were still standing.
oh. What was your uniform like?
Oh, it was the same, practically the same as what the Waves wore.
Okay.
Only it had a silver shield on the on here.
Okay. So a skirt.
A skirt and a white shirt and a tie, a navy tie that we had to have a regular knot on, and a hat
Okay. And
and a
a
jacket.
padded shoulders. Yeah.
Yeah, padded shoulders and skirts. And then the hose were tan, and then we had black shoes.
How big were how high was the heel? Was it low or did you have a heel?
We had a heel in the dress.
When you were so when you were marching, when you were talking about being out waiting in parades, were you in the heels or the lower ones?
The heels.
Oh, girl. Wow.
But they weren't very high, you know.
Okay. And it was hot in Florida.
Yeah, it was, thank goodness it was hot in Florida after coming from New York in the snow.
Right. Do you remember the rope climbing?
Oh, yeah, I remember that. I didn't like that very well because I kept slipping down.
Part of your boot camp experience?
Yeah.
How was the food?
Well, the food was fine.
Okay, good. Good. So then after the military, you went back to New York, you went home for a little bit, and then you had some cousins who moved out west. You want to pick up your story there then after the war's over, you decide to come west?
Well, after the war was over, I went with a couple of the girls that were in the Coast Guard, and we saw Los Angeles and stuff like that. And then we went to New York City. And we probably should have been looking for a job, but they gave us $20 a week or something like that for a year.
Oh, okay.
So we had some money. That was 52 20s, 20s, I don't know which came first, 2052 or 52 20s. So we had to go and collect that at the employment office, I think. And I worked for several companies in New York City, One was Jewish place where they made clothes and stuff like that. And my job was, along with several other girls, my job was to check orders from the stores like Neiman Marcus and stuff like that, and report them back to the buyer. I was assistant buyer. And then one of the secretary's bosses had a cabin up somewhere in New York, upstate New York, and he gave her the key and told her she could invite anybody, those within the company, on weekends. And I did that for a while, and it was fun, just getting away for a weekend. And they had people had cars, and we rode with them. And then I remember, let's see, I'm getting mixed up with the civilian life.
In your military life.
After I went back to New York City, I wasn't so enthusiastic about my employment, so I just told the manager I was going to leave and go to California. And he said, "Did you have a job there?" And I said, "No, but I'll get one." And when I get there. So it wasn't quite easy to get in to places because I was limited in abilities, So, but anyway, I finally did. And I worked for several companies. I worked for a Safeway for a while. Safeway was pretty good because they give us lots of samples that we could take home and have them for dinner because they want to know what we thought about the food and stuff like that. And then I guess I got married when I was in San Francisco. And, your life keeps on going.
Right, it does. So at about 1955, you decided to take out citizenship papers?
Yes, I did that in Ukiah, and I'm a citizen.
And you're a citizen. So what do you want to share your thoughts on? What were, why would you have joined the American military during World War II as an Irish national? What were
I rather served with the United States since that's where I was, and it was, I'd read up on other things, but I just go to the library and read about them and then decide. And that's how I finally became a Coast Guard person.
Well, we thank you for that service. Are there any life lessons that you can think about that you took from your time in the military that you want to share with us?
Well, I never. When I was young, I lived in a house with 9 other children, and we all got along fairly well. But then they all were milking cows, and I didn't know how to milk a cow. Mm-hmm. So one day, my aunt and uncle were gone on a business deal, and one of the kids said, "Come on, Jenny." My name was Jenny then. "Come on, Jenny, we'll teach you how to milk a cow." So I said, "Okay." So I went down, and they had it set up with a bucket where I could sit on. And they said, "This cow is so mild, she won't even know you're doing it for the first time." Well, I just did one thing, and bang! Her tail across my whole face,
Oh.
I said, "Look, I'm not interested in milking any cows ever again," and I quit.
So at an early age, you were determined.
Yes.
You knew what you wanted and when you didn't want to do something.
Yeah.
Okay. So, anything else about the time in the military that you would like to share?
Well, I can't think of anything. Maybe I'll think of 100 of them later.
Did you want to expand a little bit on, you had mentioned earlier that you wished you had stayed in the Coast Guard. What would you think you would have been doing if you had stayed in the Coast Guard?
Well, I don't know what they would give me to do, you know, or if I could have kept my rate or not, and probably not, because, you know, maybe different things were coming into being, ways of communicating with people. I just don't know what I would have done. Whatever they told me to do, I'd probably do it.
What about the GI Bill? Did you use your GI Bill for school at all? Or
Yeah, I used, I took a secretarial course in New York City, and I used it there.
Okay. And then you finally retired from the state of California, correct? So
Yeah, well, came when I was in California, and I started working for the state.
okay, so you worked for the state of California. Then that was where you retired from.
Yes, I worked for the state of California for 28 years. I think I joined them when I went to work for them in Ukiah. I lived in Ukiah, California. And when I came down here, I kept working until I was 55.
Okay.
And that's where I get my money.
Okay. What was your favorite part of being in the military as a woman in World War II?
Well, I think it was the fact that you had so many people around you. You mean, you're never alone, you see. It was interesting, and you could do things with different people. And I really can't say what it was, but everything combined. And you got fed, and you walked and walked.
So if you had to name one thing, what would be your least favorite thing about the military during the war?
Well, probably the room inspections. But otherwise, it was fine.
Well, we want to thank you for your service, Jane.
Oh, you're welcome.
Anything else that you would like to add?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.